Good afternoon, YouTubers. Well, it's a bit windy today, so I've had to put my microphone on. Hopefully you can hear me okay. It's quite annoying, isn't it, when you're trying to say something, trying to listen to what people are saying, and the wind is interfering and you can't get through. My darling wife is doing the boat, she's doing the roof. She's been on with fixing that prior to fiberglassing it. We're going to mat it and fiberglass it. I say we, she is, because I'm not very well at the moment. I'm not being lazy, but I've got issues. Anyway, I've been spending a lot of time on the internet because I'm on the sick. I like to get out and about a little bit, go for a bit of a walk and things, have a look at some of the boats. But I was on the internet and I was looking at these new electric aeroplanes. As you know, I got my pilot's license for light aeroplanes in 1996. What's that? 25 years ago, something like that. And I've never flown an electric aeroplane. Okay, they're a relatively new thing, but we've seen lots of these EV cars. There's loads of people who've got them now. Loads of them have had issues with fires, and it's always a worry when you're flying an aeroplane if it's going to catch fire while you're flying it. I mean, they have done in the past, and you don't want to fly a bonfire for sure. And it would be sensible to carry a parachute all the time. Although I have to say, I didn't really fly with a parachute very often. Jump flying, when you're flying parachutists, the pilot usually has a parachute on, not a double parachute, only a single one, because you're only ever going to use it in an emergency. And aerobatics, you generally wear a parachute when you're doing aerobatics in case you have some sort of structural failure and you have to get out. But generally speaking, in general aviation, you don't wear a parachute. I'd wear one. I would if I bought my own, just a single pilot's parachute. I don't have one, but I would if I had the opportunity, and I think it would be definitely sensible to wear one. But it's all additional weight, you see. So the pilot parachutes have just got one parachute in there, so they're quite light. They're not really a heavy or cumbersome thing like a skydiver's parachute. They're a lot bigger and more cumbersome and heavier. But yeah, if an electric aeroplane, if it bursts into flames, there's no way I'd stay with a burning aeroplane and just get burned to death. You know, people would jump out even to their death because hitting the ground will be a lot quicker death, wouldn't it, than burning to death slowly. For sure, it's a horrible thought. I mean, we don't really focus on you're worried about everything that could possibly go wrong. You'd never do anything in life, would you? You'd just stay in bed. But yeah, and the other thing I was going to talk about was 4x4s. Lots of people have always taken the piss out of people. Hola.
Hola.
Lots of people have always taken the piss out of people for driving around in 4x4s, taking the kids to school and never going off road and stuff like this. And it makes me laugh. I like 4x4s. I'm into 4x4s. I used to have a Land Rover when I met Fiona. She is up on the boat there. Look. And we went all over Europe. We towed all over Europe with we built a little caravan in Holland and towed it all around Europe for a couple of years. That was great fun. It really was. But Fiona didn't like it. She said it was a bone shaker. And she made me sell it. Well, it was on its last legs. It was dying anyway. But it was a very good vehicle. I liked it. It was basic, and it did. You know, you could whatever went wrong with it, you could generally find a way around it. You know, whereas modern vehicles today. When I was a tow truck driver, I came across one of the jobs I came across was a Land Rover Discovery, a brand new one, I mean, this thing was still shiny. You could still smell the interior, as you do with a brand new car. And the guy said to me, "Oh, it won't go forwards. It only goes backwards." And I said, "What?" And I sat in it, put it into gear. It was an automatic. Put it into gear. Nothing. Wouldn't go forwards. Put it into reverse. Yep, go backwards. So, I mean, there's nothing I can do with it. I thought, well, I don't know what's wrong with it. It'll have to go back to the main dealer, which we did. That was my job, was to winch it onto the back of the tow truck and take it back to the main dealer, Harwood's, I think it was, in Sussex. And when we got there, obviously the truck's, it's a slide and tilt bed, and then you have to winch the vehicle down onto the road. And while I was doing this guy jumped in. He jumped in the car, and he's got a laptop, and he's plugging it into the computer, and he's there typing away. And I thought, well, I'll just carry on. I'll just carry on winching the thing off. I mean, I winched it to the ground, unclipped all the straps and things, and the guy starts it up. He's obviously the mechanic from the main dealer, and it drove forward, it drove backwards, and he parked it up. He said, "There you go, it's fixed." Excuse me. And I said, "What was it then?" He goes, "Oh, it just needed a software update." And I thought, you what? A software update? So what happens if he wasn't outside his house? You know, what happens if he was miles and miles? Let's say he took it off-road. I mean, I know a lot of people buy these fancy 4x4s and they don't actually go off-road, but what if you did? You know, you thought to yourself, right, I've got a Land Rover Discovery and I'm going to load a load of stuff and I'm going to go off into the wilderness, and all of a sudden you find your car won't go forwards, it only goes backwards. And you're in the middle of nowhere. Are you going to reverse for hundreds? Well, depending where you go, are you going to reverse a long way to get back to civilization, or somewhere where you can jump on a tow truck? Tow trucks can't go in the wilderness, you know that, don't you? There's not very many of them are off-road tow trucks, 4x4s. You know, I dare say there are some out there, but I've never seen one. And completely, to me, it defeats the object of having a 4x4. They've brought out this new Land Rover Defender. It's not a Land Rover, it's a Grenadier, EOS Grenadier. Looks like a Land Rover. And by all accounts, it's a tremendously good vehicle. I'd love to have a go in one, let alone own one. They're very expensive, they're not cheap. One of the things about the old Land Rover was it was very basic. You could buy the basic model. Mine was a van, 2-door. And I think all the Grenadiers are like the 4-door Safari, luxury executive seats and things, and all the bells and whistles. I mean, a fabulous piece of kit. I'm not knocking the Grenadier, don't get me wrong. I think it's amazing, but it's out of my price range. I could never afford to spend 100,000 on a car, you know. No way. Where's the Land Rover? You could buy a basic van, you know, with a smaller engine and the normal cloth seats and things like that. It was great. I loved it. And you know, you could put accessories on if you wanted them. You could useful things, you know, like a roof rack and a ladder up the back. Maybe bull bars and a winch. Winch should be good. But you know, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't buy for accessories. You know, I don't think I'd buy leather Ricardo seats, for example. And I wouldn't want all that electric gadgetry inside. A mate of mine had a Range Rover. Well, I say a mate, I know him. He's not really a mate, but he said to me, I was talking to him in the pub, I think it was last year. I said, "Where's your Range Rover?" He goes, "Oh, I had to get rid of it." Why? He said the immobiliser became defective on it, and he wouldn't start. And apparently, to take it to the Land Rover main agent, to have the immobiliser looked at, was so expensive. Well, they quoted him So he decided to scrap it and buy a new car instead. I thought, well, that just defeats the whole purpose, doesn't it? I don't want all these gizmos and these fancy gadgets and things. That's why I do like the basic Land Rover. You know, you add to it what you want. I had a solar panel on my roof. I screwed it to the roof. It was a diesel, and sometimes it took a bit of winding to get it going. And we were out here in Spain, so I bought a solar panel with a square. I don't know, it must have been about 18 inches square. Screwed it to the roof, ran the wires down to the battery, and the battery was always full because it's sitting there. I was working, I was doing building and stuff like this, bricklaying, and the car's standing there in the sun all day, soaking up power and charging the battery. So it doesn't matter if it took a lot of winding to get it going in the morning, because you just buy and fit what you need. I got a Ken Lo fan actually for the radiator. That was useful, but you don't need to buy something that's fully loaded with all the bells and whistles to begin with for 100 grand. I mean, it's fine if you've got the money, and I wouldn't say no, if I had the money. But I like the Land Cruiser, the 200 Toyota Land Cruiser. I think that's a really good piece of kit. Fabulous. And we get a lot of Toyotas here in Tyrol, so there's a car dealership here that imports them, and they modify them for the United Nations. Put all kinds of bull bars and all kinds of stuff on them, and then they seem to sit parked up for a long time. And then they get sold off to the UN. There must be some sort of tax deal, I don't know. But I do like 4x4s. I don't have one. But I learned 4x4 driving. I joined the army, the British Army, as a driver in the Royal Corps of Transport. I mean, that regiment doesn't even exist anymore. It's Royal Logistics Corps now. But back in the day, 79, when I joined up, I became a driver. That's what they did. Everyone in the regiment was a driver, and they taught you to drive cars first, and then they moved on to lorries. Margaret Thatcher had just got in, so when I came to do I've never passed a driving test in a car ever. They said, "Oh, we could save money by doing a dual test in the lorry." So you had a normal L plate on the lorry, then you had the HGV L plate as well. And we did it at South Cerney, which was an old airfield somewhere between Swindon and Cirencester. So we drove round and round the Perry track there for about 3 days, changing up, changing down, stopping, putting the handbrake on, putting it into neutral, then putting it back into gear, setting off, changing up and down through all the gears. And there was an instructor and two drivers. And so Bedford TK, 4-tonner, and when they thought you were ready and you could go in and out the cones and reverse through the cones without knocking the cones down or driving over the lines, they let you go out on the road. And I passed my test in Swindon. And then you get back to the regiment and they send you on the B3 driver's course, it was called then, which is a basic driver's course for the 4x4s, where we had Land Rovers. There were series Land Rovers, lightweight Land Rovers, and but we were on the Bedford MK. And I don't know if you've ever seen a Bedford MK. It's a 4-wheel drive version of the TK 4-tonner, and it was fantastic, honest to God. If you were to see one now at one of these old shows or something like that, you'd look at them and you think, wow, that's seriously old piece of kit. But it was old. But we drove them in the most horrendous places. We bogs and swamps, Salisbury Plain, in the dark with no lights and all this kind of stuff. And we were driving them through the mud on the tank tracks in Aldershot, Rushmore Arena. And I've had corporals stop in the Land Rover and say, "Oh, not taking the Land Rover in there. It'll get stuck, but the Bedford MK will be okay." And I've looked and it's just like a lake of mud. And I've said to him, "Are you sure?" And he went, "Yeah, no problem at all." And I thought, well, it's not my truck, I don't care. So I just drove it in and it just went all the way through and out the other side. And I thought, wow, it was up to its axles in mud. That's incredible. But it was a very basic vehicle. It'd only do 45 miles an hour, flat out on the motorway, you know. And I think it was a 6 cylinder. I'm sure it was a 6 cylinder diesel. And when you first started it up, there was no brakes. It had air brakes. So you could put your foot on the pedal, on the brake pedal, and it'd go straight to the floor. And there was a buzzer in the cab, which is a warning buzzer. Do not set off because you've got no brakes. So you had to wait a couple of minutes for the compressor, because there's a compressor attached to the engine, and that had charged the brakes up. And once the tank had reached a certain pressure, the buzzer would go off, and you just test it with your foot. Yeah, we've got brakes now. And off we went. No power steering, nothing. But the basicness of it was incredible, because these trucks were getting abused. You know, they'd have big pallets full of ammunition boxes, which were full of concrete, because it was simulated loads of ammunition. Because our job, if we ever went to war, would be to supply the soldiers who were actually doing the fighting, because we were not a fighting unit. Although we had guns and everything, and, you know, I guess basic. If you got caught up in a fight, you could put up a fight. But we were not a fighting unit, we were a supply unit. So our job would be to take all the ammunition, food, medical supplies, anything from our position up to the front line troops where they needed it. So there's always a chance you could get shot at, for sure. But never went to war, didn't do any of that. But it was all training, it was all part of the training. And those vehicles got abused, they did. And I went to some absolutely ridiculous places. You wouldn't take a vehicle, and those vehicles never, ever got stuck. They trained us how to get vehicles out if they were stuck. We had straight bars, and being an army vehicle, it's got a tow hook on the front of the vehicle and on the back. So you can attach the straight bar from one vehicle to another, forwards, backwards, however, and then pull it out, push it out, whatever. And they even had hose pipes for the airlines. So if the other one had broken down, had no engine, it'd have no brakes. So you'd connect the airlines from the truck to the other truck, and then the one that was doing the recovering would be supplying the air for the brakes on the other one. And it worked. The system worked. It was simple, it was basic, and it worked. And nowadays they've got all these computers and electronics and software, and you think, well, that's no good. So you can't be sat in the middle of nowhere and need a software update. No one's got a computer laptop or an internet connection or whatever else. This is rubbish. They've just killed the 4x4 really by putting all these stupid gizmos in there. I don't like them. I don't want them. I wanted something really basic that works. And you know, you can't beat the Jeep. I love the Jeep. I've had to go in loads of 4x4s. They tend to be quite expensive. I wouldn't buy a Range Rover. I wouldn't buy a new Discovery. Not at all. The old Land Rover 110 was great, and I think the Grenadier's got loads of potential. And if they made a basic model of it without all the gadgets and the fancy seats and things, it'd be a lot cheaper, wouldn't it, than 100 grand? And then you could add what you wanted instead of buying something straight off with all the bells and the whistles. And I don't want an electric one either. I really don't. Well, thanks for listening to me moaning away about a load of stuff. I want to go and see how my wife's getting on. I might make her a cup of tea. She might enjoy that.